What's going on, guys? It's Halsey Scheider with the Helicopter Podcast, and I am excited to be podcasting today. Typically what I like to do, full disclosures, I like to podcast kind of once or twice a month. I schedule a bunch of episodes so I can get them all done, and this is actually the tail end of day one of doing that, and I don't think that I could finish with a stronger guest. Unless you've been living under a rock and you don't watch any social media videos or things like that, then maybe you don't know Glen White. But I've been familiar with Glen White now through social media and everything he's doing with Euro Safety and all the cool videos that he's producing and all the cool content that he's pushing out to elevate himself and his brand and to provide so much awesomeness to the industry. So I'm just so excited for this conversation. Of course, big shout out to MHM Publishing, Vertical Magazine, and the Vertical HeliCASTS platform. We couldn't do this show without you guys. And of course, your support is amazing on top of our incredible sponsors. And to our listeners, thank you guys so much. Because you listen, I get to direct message people like Glen and convince them that it's worth their valuable time to come and talk with me for an hour. So thank you guys for listening and making all of this possible. Glen, what's up, man? Welcome to the Helicopter Podcast.
How you doing, Halsey? It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm doing good, man. It looks like you're at a hotel today. Where are you at?
I am in, what is the name of this town? I forget half the time. Galloway, New Jersey.
Okay, so you're on the East Coast today doing some recurrent trading, I'm assuming?
Yeah, 355 F2.
I thought I saw the F2 stuff. I think you posted maybe yesterday or the day before the class. So I saw that you were doing. For listeners out there that might not know what the F2 is, talk to us about that platform a little bit, as it's not really a super well-known or used aircraft as much as it used to be.
Yeah, it's a twin-engine helicopter. They first came up with this on the platform of the A-Star. And it's a two-engine version, basically, of the A-Star. It came into existence when the regulations changed in Europe to requiring two engines over populated areas. So they made that throughout the 80s, early 90s. They changed over to the N model, which had, they took the Allison engines out and put turbomeca engines in. And then later they upgraded it to the NP with the VEMD and stuff. But as soon as Aerospatiale and MBB merged to make Eurocopter, their agreement was they were going to stop selling the twin stars in the United States. That's why you haven't really seen a lot within the United States, because they wanted to sell their EC-135 at that point in the United States.
It's almost like they didn't want to overcrowd the market. They wanted to kind of be specific on what they were selling. Yeah, but actually, in my sales business, I've only ever sold a twin star one time.
No,
it's just not an aircraft that I come across very often. But it seems like a great idea. Like, I love the A-Star, a twin engine A-Star, at least in my rudimentary mind, seems like a kind of a win-win.
Yeah, it's a really good, simple twin engine helicopter. Especially in today's world where everything's getting very complicated. You look at like the EC or the H145, you're more of a systems operator in that helicopter as opposed to a pilot. Where back in the Twin Star, you were a pilot. You had you have two engines and the safety of two engines. And it was a simple aircraft to fly. And of course, today it's not that easy of a transition when you go into a twin engine helicopter.
Makes total sense. So Euro Safety, like I said in my intro, I started to kind of become familiar with you, because of my business, right? I'm in the sales world. I heard of Glen White. I heard of Euro Safety. I have some friends up in Canada that we actually were like scrambling to find some instructor pilots. Hey, go to Euro Safety, and then that deal fell apart. But really, where I caught on with you was watching your videos that you produce and create and put on social media. And something that I really admire, I feel like it's kind of like free education, it's free content to the world. And by and large, it seems like there's great engagement, lots of views, lots of comments, people engaging on the comments. Uh, was that just by happenstance? Like, hey, I'm just going to start filming what I'm doing, and then it kind of turned into something bigger? Or was there always like a little bit of premeditation, like, hey, I feel like this could be a great way to connect with the audience?
Well, I first started actually making these things back in 2010. And so I'd periodically put out a video, a few times a year, basically. And the idea was that, a lot of people feel hesitant of going into a ground school because they feel like they don't know as much as they should. Because as you know, there's just so much information to know that you will never get to the end of the information you need to know
Seriously.
to fly any aircraft. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to provide some information out there so that, it kind of primes the pump. So people feel like, okay, I think I know enough about this aircraft where I feel comfortable going into a ground school. And then during the whole COVID thing, a lot of people started requesting online training. So I had to learn how to do
Sure.
online stuff, filming all this different stuff for real. And as you know, trying to do this stuff, just audio alone will drive you crazy, let alone lighting and filming and cameras and all that different stuff. So I decided to I'll make these really short ones as kind of a test.
Sure.
And people really liked them. So I just kept making those over and over again. And as you said, it's had a great response. And I like the fact that people are so interested in learning more. That's encouraging to me within our industry, that people have a desire to learn more. And if that information is out there, they're going to go look at it. Whereas if it's not readily available, people kind of shy back from learning anything. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's really neat. I think it's fun when you create something unintentionally, like you kind of have an idea, like, hey, I'm going to do quick videos primarily because they're easier to produce, right? We were talking about that before the show today. Sometimes I'm too far away from my microphone. Sometimes I'm too close. My lighting sucks.
You never get audio right, ever.
It's like, it's very complicated. And so I've actually even thought about that with you before. When I watch your videos, I'm like, man, this guy's figured out the simplicity. Like, keep it simple. Stupid is kind of the KISS model, right? And I think it's really neat. So I appreciate, and again, it looks like the community appreciates kind of that content that you're pushing out. For our listeners that may not be familiar with you, or they've not seen your videos or familiar with Euro Safety, give us just a little bit of your elevator pitch of who you are, what Euro Safety is, and what that's all about, and kind of why you started this thing.
Okay. I worked for, at the time, Eurocopter, which obviously became Airbus. I stopped working there. I went on to fly an S-76 for Children's Hospital in Dallas after working there for a few years. But a lot of the clients that I had while I was there, a lot of the people that I instructed at the factory, wanted me to continue to come and teach them. So I just kind of started this as a part-time thing. And in about this time, really all the manufacturers have really started shying away from the desire to give training. They make helicopters. They're not really in the business of training pilots. And obviously I'm much more free of talking about issues, talking about accidents, because I am not tied to litigation that could occur by talking about a part that broke or something. And so I can talk about something that could be a safety issue for a pilot, and without worrying about getting sued for it, type
Sure.
thing. So it just started growing more and more. And over the years, what was it, about 13 years ago, I went on just doing this as my full-time gig. And so it's kind of grown into a monster of, animators and graphic artists and accountants and all the other people that make this happen. And, and with the videos, there's no planning with them whatsoever. I'll be walking across the ramp and go, boom, I'll do a video. And you grab the camera real quick and you do it. And sometimes it just looks like garbage or sounds like garbage. And sometimes it works out.
I mean, that's really, I think, why people resonate though, Glenn, because it's authentic, right? I think sometimes when you just kind of off the cuff it like that, people respond because it's truly authentic. I'll do that occasionally too, like if I'm on a pre-buy or something and it's like this light bulb. Hey, this is interesting to me. And if I can articulate it with my iPhone and my stupid voice, then maybe someone else might find that this is interesting what we just came across on this pre-buy. And then of course it enhances the brand, right? I mean, that's why we're all doing this.
Oh yeah.
It's to reinforce you and your brand. Something else that I love too is watching all the people that you're flying with, because I know most of them. So
Right? It's such a small industry.
when you make a post, I'm like, oh, look, Eli's with Glen today. And
Yeah.
oh, look, he's flying with York today. And
Yeah.
so it's just really neat. It's like, man, Glen flies with everyone.
I have the privilege.
It really seems like you're a very busy guy. How many days a year are you like busy training?
Well, it's getting to be a little bit, too much for my schedule. Back in 2019, I was actually giving a lot of my classes to my other instructors because I have so much other stuff I have to do, let alone now we have all that online stuff that we're putting together. But then, of course, 2020 occurred and all of a sudden nobody could travel while I kept going out. And so I took on everything. And then I started, coming out of that, but then we started growing because of the videos that started getting made and, and our exposure and stuff. And then now everybody's busy, including me. So as we start growing more, it's the hardest thing I have is, to find the right instructor, somebody who wants to learn like all the minutia and get up there and talk for 8 hours in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and be happy with it. So it's kind of a unique situation for people to want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be awesome personally. I always loved flight instruction. I was a flight instructor for a while. I grew up in outside of Portland, Oregon, and ironically enough, there's a big flight school there, Hillsboro
Sure.
Aviation at the time, now Hillsboro Heli Academy. And I loved being there. I loved being at home. I loved being close to my family. Ended up, working my way up into the flight school management. So I instructed for a really long time. That's
awesome.
kind of what I'm getting at. It was much longer than most. And then I got eager. I definitely was starting to get like that itch of like, okay, I need to go and do something. And now here I am. I don't fly full time anymore, and I haven't for probably about 5 years. But I feel like that would be such a neat thing now to go back and teach a little bit of a higher level of instruction. For me, flight instruction is like that one job where you get to go and access an aircraft and go and do maneuvers. You could be doing off airports in a morning block, and then you're doing full downs on a midday block, and then you're finishing up with ab initio private training, normal approaches, in the afternoon, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And it was just so fun, and so I really enjoyed that. Is it hard for you to find qualified pilots that want to come back into the training world?
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Well, there, like you said, there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction getting somebody from point A to point B, particularly when you're talking about a professional pilot. It's not like you're trying to stop somebody from killing themselves. You're trying to get the perfect auto, the nice landing, and so forth. But for the training, it's not so difficult to would find somebody that would be interested in doing the flight portion if that's all it was.
Of course.
But when you start doing the ground school part, it's an endless string of questions that could be asked and information that you have to know. And you have to just enjoy going and finding that information.
Sure.
People on my videos often say, aren't you afraid that, you're going to put out so much information? They don't even need to hire you anymore. I haven't even scratched the surface of the amount of information that's out there.
Yeah, you can't.
I could do these videos for the next 30 years and not get to the end of it. So, I mean, you never do. And then, when you start teaching people, the fear often is they're going to ask me a question I don't know, which will happen every day.
Sure.
It happens with me every day. And every time I do that, I just learned a new thing because I have to go out and find that information.
Yeah, of course.
And sometimes, pilots, when they ask you a question and you don't know it, they're like, oh, well, I guess this guy doesn't know anything then. So, and it's a little bit discouraging when that kind of thing happens. It's like, well, I know a lot of other stuff. So,
why'd you ask that one obscure question that maybe probably doesn't even matter?
Well, I think sometimes people do that.
Well, and that's certainly a thing, right? I've definitely been in the ground training situations where maybe say I'm doing a recurrent 135 yearly training with a group of pilots. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you get that one guy that likes to exercise his knowledge to the group.
That's a very politically correct way of saying that.
And hey, look, I've never been that guy. In fact, one of my shortcomings, I think, as a pilot is I'm more of like a give me everything that I need to know to be safe and not kill myself. But I can't, like, my little brain doesn't have enough to be an expert in aerodynamics, weather. I want to know the EPs. I want to know how I got to react. And then I just want to go and fly, right? And then there's some guys that will ask these questions of like, well, what is the degree tilt of the fenestron blade? And I'm like, why does that matter? You know?
But they know it. So that's why they're asking it to you. That's the one thing they know, right? Yeah. And then now all of a sudden they're the smartest guy in the room. And if you want to be the smartest guy, I don't care. I'm going to tell you what I know. And if you want to feel like you're smarter, go ahead. I just don't care.
Well, I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one that has experienced kind of that.
Oh, yeah. We all do. Every instructor does.
Look, I remember going back to my flight training days, and I'm glad that we're talking about this because a lot of our listeners are actually newer pilots going through flight school, maybe about to land their first CFI gig. Mm-hmm. And, one thing that I've always tried to encourage to new CFIs is always be honest, right? You can't know everything.
No.
I remember one of my students was a physicist, a guy named Matthias, a German physicist. I had another guy that was
German physicist. That's a whole different level there.
Tell me about it. I had another guy, Christophe. He was in the French military, worked for the government doing nuclear weapons testing, right? These guys, very smart guys. And I remember Matthias sometimes would say, well, when you're talking about ground resonance, can you explain these frequencies, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I have no idea what you're talking about, right? And then he was doing this whole education. He pulled out a tuning fork from the back pocket and said, well, let me show you. What do you know? So I guess what I'm getting at is you're going to have students that really want to know everything. And that's beautiful. That's not a bad.
They truly want to know everything.
Yeah. As long as it's coming from the right place. And it's okay to say, hey, look, that's a great question. Let's research that together, or let me research that and get back to you. Yeah. That's not a bad answer or a wrong answer because you're not going to know everything. Yeah. Look, a new CFI to me is like the blind leading the blind, right? So, if you can answer half the questions and then not kill yourself or your student in the aircraft, then, I think that you're having a leg up. So, it's definitely, I'm sure it happens at the higher level, probably even more extreme because, again, people are trying to kind of exercise their expertise or their knowledge. So, as far as your team goes, right now, you have additional instructors that help kind of go around and fill all this craziness that you have?
Yeah, we have 11 I guess 10 more besides me. 11 total instructors that go out all over the place. And most of the guys have, other jobs like EMS where they're week on, week off, or 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off in places. And then they'll, on their free time, do a class or two now and then for us, like one class a month or something for us.
That's super cool. Yeah, I mean, what a cool opportunity, especially guys that are flying like air medical, or actually I would say most off the ramp, 135 work where you actually really don't get to exercise any type of maneuver training or practice, emergency procedures until it's your yearly recurrent, right?
Yeah. It's the one time where you get to play.
Exactly. And that playing is important, man. I tell you, I taught full downs in an R22 for 3 years straight.
God bless you.
I know. I'm glad. I was like 23 years old at the time too. I'm glad I'm alive. And that's not a dig on the aircraft.
No, I have experience when I first started out in the R22 also. All of us did.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hillsborough at that time had 30,000 plus hours of safe flight training in the R22. But being 22 years old and flying an R22 and teaching fold downs, my 37-year-old self looks back at that now and kind of gets a lump in my throat. But man, you go into the real world, you start flying, you do this job, you do that job, and then it comes time to do your yearly recurrent, and it's time for you to go and do autos. And man, it's like if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So
Perishable
for me, I couldn't believe it. I thought, okay, I'm going to leave Hillsborough, and I'm always going to be so comfortable and good at flying auto rotations. Completely not the case, right? It's like, man, you don't use it, you lose it.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely, every skill is perishable and every bit of knowledge is perishable. I literally built a career out of those two facts.
Yeah,
if
seriously.
people didn't forget stuff and your skill wasn't perishable, why would you need me to come back? Just to have fun? You wouldn't need me in the helicopter. But, whether you're talking about golf or tennis or volleyball, it all goes away. But you remember the last way you did it. So if you played volleyball when you were 15 and you were great at it, and then all of a sudden when you're 45, you try to play it again, you're going to think, oh, I'm going to kick butt doing this. And then you're out there and you look like a drunk monkey. So it does go away very quickly. And, and a lot of, going back to the 22, it's not that, it's an impossible aircraft to auto-rotate. It's just a more difficult one to auto-rotate. I mean, you look at the 350, and it's quite a simple aircraft as long as you're within the right parameters to do a safe auto-rotation. It can make everybody feel better that, if they're doing their full-down autos in the 22, when you get to the 350, it's going to be so much easier.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to love life at that point.
Yeah, it's night and day. I got to be honest, I got really good at doing full downs. And I could peg it at 109%, hold it.
That's amazing.
If I had 5 knots of headwind, I could have a 0 run
That's
full
amazing.
down. I did kiss the Stinger one time, but other than that, yeah, no incidents or accidents ever, including that experience. No overspeed
Excellent.
or anything. I really actually enjoyed that. I loved, and I got so lucky. I had wonderful. We had a new chief instructor, a guy named Marcus Grudke. Shout out Marcus. He's a good friend of mine, and he came back from the industry. He had, gone.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Sowed his oats for 10, 12 years. And then he came back and he changed how we did autos. And I got to fly with him a crap ton because I was his assistant chief. And so I just got to learn so much from this guy. And then I got to pass that on. It was a really neat, good experience for me. I'm glad that I stayed a little bit longer because of it. I look back and really fond memories. One thing that I wrestle with a lot in my business is I work with a lot of really cool guys and gals that are successful humans, whether they've built success in business or as lawyers or doctors.
Yeah.
And they're fulfilling kind of a lifelong dream of owning an aircraft, a helicopter. And this is a common client of ours, right?
It's booming.
It's huge right now. And I try my best from a sales position, but a guy that also knows a lot about helicopters, and have seen a lot of people unfortunately pass away in helicopters. And I've seen kind of the dark side. I always try to impart my wisdom as best I can, but I'm just curious to hear from you the difference of what the style difference that you bring when you're working with, say, a private owner versus a guy like Eli Malloy, who's a constant professional, great pilot, wants to learn, does it the right way. What is the difference, and how do you kind of help usher the importance of making good decisions to these private guys and gals?
It's time for your Heli Life giveaway secret word. Listen up and remember this word because you'll need it to enter for a chance to win exclusive Heli Life gear. Ready? This episode's secret word is heliport. Visit contests.verticalhelicasts.com to enter the secret word.
Well, like you said, it's a massively increasing portion of our industry. And I think the reason for that being is the mindset in today's world that makes you successful, a new successful person in business, is the same type mindset that would like to fly a helicopter. Now, it's not like the old days. Like, you remember in the old days, the doctor killers, right? The doctors would all buy airplanes and then thought because they were doctors, they were geniuses in the aircraft. Well, in today's world, the guy that buys a helicopter, he is sometimes more hungry for knowledge and doing it right than the professional pilot. Because the professional pilot, a lot of times, is like, yeah, I'm a professional pilot. I know everything. I go fly every day. And the guy who is successful at building a big company, he's the guy who wants to know everything. He goes, I want to go fly 4 times a year with you. I want ground school twice a year. And then they're, texting me twice a month. And, they're constantly wanting more information where, sometimes a professional pilot is like, yeah, I'll learn that later. It's not that big of a deal. So I'm surprised how much the industry has changed in that part. Whereas, these guys would go out and buy an aircraft and go kill themselves within a year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now some of the private guys, quite frankly, are some of the safest pilots out there. So, a lot of them get some bad PR for, they post stuff online and people think, oh, they're doing stuff unsafe. But, I know a lot of these guys personally, and they are straight up and they want to do everything the safest they can. So.
Yeah, well, that's really good to hear. Look, I'm very lucky because a lot of my clients become friends, and I've always been told that you should have friends that own boats, have swimming pools, helicopters, and maybe even private airplanes too. That's been quite nice. And I have been lucky because I get to fly with a lot of guys that are private. But there are times where I still see this mentality, right, of I'm not using the checklist, or I don't need, little things that bother me, right? So I always try to kind of impart my little wisdom of like, hey, look, I know it might be silly. I just actually flew a 130 back from Toronto down to Reno, and with a client. And, the whole time I wanted to always set good habits. So I'm using the checklist every time. I'm clearing all of my turns. And even my clients like, why are you doing that all the time? I'm like, well, because that's what professional pilots do, right? Like
Exactly.
That's how you stay safe in this. And when I leave and you're flying this helicopter, I want you to see that, hey, even a guy that had a fair amount of experience in helicopters is still pulling out the checklist every time. And, I'm kind of a do then verify guy with particular aircraft, especially in the 130. It's a pretty easy sequence starting up. But I still want to use that checklist, and I still want it to be present. And I think it's those small little habits that I always try to impart on people. But I'm really glad to hear that you're having good, positive experience with a lot of private folks. I definitely caught myself in some traps as a professional pilot, especially flying air medical, where it's pretty easy to sit on a lazy boy and watch Netflix, opposed to, maybe getting into the RFM, looking at EPs. I actually had a situation one time where, I had an indication in the cockpit, some type of amber warning. I honestly don't remember what it was. This was several years ago in a Long Ranger. And I was like, oh, shit. I think I'm supposed to land practical. What, and that was a humbling moment for me because I was like, man, I don't know. I'm not sharp right now because I've made decisions not to further my knowledge. And so that was like what I considered a little bit of a get out of jail free card of like
a little lesson,
no harm, no foul, but dude, do better, So I guess let's ask the same question for the guys and gals that you're flying with that are professional pilots. How do you keep them sharp and keeping them eager for learning?
Well, one of the big things we do is we go over a lot of accidents, and a lot of accidents start with just like, what you did right there, where you're saying, I saw the light and I couldn't remember. Now, strangely enough, when we start getting confused or frightened, our brain actually starts working worse. It actually starts firing less. You start going into more of an automatic mode.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get frightened enough or confused enough, which is self-generating, you go down that bad rabbit hole, all of a sudden you start doing just automatic stuff. And there's a ton of pilots that have had incidences and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Well, it was because you allowed yourself to get frightened. Whereas if you have, like a battery temp light come on and you go, oh, I know what that is. And you click that and all of a sudden you have a complete electrical failure and like, and you turn the battery back on. You're like, I guess I'll go, back and fly and land. Whereas, there's been cases where helicopters have been crashed because of that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of very simple things just because the pilot got frightened within the aircraft, or that disbelief. There's just accident report after accident report after accident report of all this different stuff happening. So, like you said, you can be blessed enough to have a situation where, it kind of reminds you, hey, I need to read a little bit more. I need to periodically look at this stuff, and hope it isn't like a real bad thing where, it's a tragic result.
Yeah, it's great to hear that you're incorporating accident reports. I tell people in non-helicopter world all the time, like, what do you talk about in flight school? I'm like, well, you talk about how to die a lot and how to
Right.
crash helicopters,
Yeah.
which is kind of like this honest truth. And sometimes I have to be careful. Like recently I was talking about the accident in New York, and I was talking with non-aviation folks, and they were like, man, you're so candid about it. Like, you're so direct. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I wasn't even really thinking. I get disconnected sometimes when I'm talking about like a helicopter accident to think of like, oh shit, this was a really tremendous event in a bad way, you know? And it's wild because I think as a helicopter pilot, you have to be willing to look at those reports. You have to be willing to understand and see where everything kind of went wrong. And then you have to also, in my opinion, you have to admit like, man, I might have done that same thing. Right. I try to always find those gaps. There's been, accident reports that I'll review and I'll say, man, I've made that kind of decision, right? I've gone down that path. I just didn't take it to the next level. So I got really lucky.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to be able to put that up against yourself. And I think sometimes it's hard to be self-critical, right? And pilots in general.
Yeah. It could never happen to me.
Exactly. Until it does, right? Like
until it does.
And that's so wild to me. And anytime that I've ever been in a helicopter where something was a little wonky, it goes quick, right? Things start to move fast, right? And so, it's just interesting to really kind of say, well, it could happen to me. And oftentimes I tell non-helicopter people that, usually the helicopter's pretty good, meaning you don't have an incident like New York where the thing literally just falls out of the sky, which is horrible. That's like a pilot's worst nightmare, right? Give me something that I can work with. But oftentimes you look at these accident reports and man, that accident started when the guy woke up out of bed or chose to stay up too late the night before and then was tired and then was running behind and then chose not to pre-flight and then chose not to use a checklist and then flew for 10 hours. And then hit a power line, it's all these things that line up that we've all kind of, fallen into. You get to fly with so many people, professionals, personal people. What are some of the big gaps right now you see in people's aeronautical knowledge and their just physical flight skill?
As always, a special thanks to Helicopter for producing this podcast. Specializing in helicopter evaluations, faster sales, and superb service, Helicopter is the go-to agency for clients expecting immediate results. Helicopter's team of helicopter professionals are the best in the business. Using their aviation expertise, a nationwide network, and a proprietary 76-step listing strategy, Helicopter will convert your listing from Mayday to payday. Ready to get started? Text Helicopter to 1-855-Helicopter. That's Helicopter to 1-855-735-5226. And a Helicopter pilot agent will reach out. Helicopter. List it, sell it, done.
Well, like with anything, everybody is generally very good at the basics, obviously, of picking up and setting down a helicopter. And as we talked about earlier, there's the perishable skills of the emergency procedures, like a full down and so forth. And there's the normal loss of memory of a lot of the different systems and stuff. That's what we kind of do. But between the time period, I don't think that pilots spend enough time kind of on their own pursuing some knowledge. And that's one of the reasons, again, and another one of the reasons I make these videos, just so there's something out there, and we're trying to develop some kind of online thing where, people could go once a month and have a short review of items. Even if you get down to a lot of the Eurocopter products, the emergency procedure section has bold lined items, and those are your memory items. Now, the vast majority of pilots flying those aircraft don't remember what the memory items are. And it's something, if you memorized all the memory items today, a month from today, you could probably only repeat about half of them. 2 months, they're probably mostly gone. So it's something that you constantly have to do. And we're trying to figure out some tools to help people out with that. We're doing our app.
Awesome.
Finally, after all these years, we made a free app years ago that it doesn't really work anymore. But we made it 15 years ago. So that's supposed to come out. I was promised last week, and it's not out. Anyways, and then we're also going to put like flashcards in there. But you can look at the various emergencies by clicking on the light and so forth. So, I think if people have tools, they're more apt to try to find a lot of this information out there.
I always encourage people to figure out how they learn best. So for me, I'm a flashcard guy. So when I got hired at Maverick Helicopters back in the day, I want to be the best always. It's kind of my mentality. It's good and bad because I'm competitive.
That's
so
good.
Like when I'm in a training class, not that I try to be the smartest guy in the room, but I just want to be the best. I don't know. It's in anything I do.
You want to know the answers to the questions being asked.
Sometimes. But man, I memorized the EC-130. I could even verbatim the smoke in the cockpit for the 130, and that's like a novel, right? It's like there's Harry Potter, and then there's that, right? It's like it's insane. And that's 8 years ago. And then I would read my flashcards at least once a quarter, study. I always felt really good. 8 years, I couldn't tell you. You could ask me, I couldn't come up with an EP right now.
Yeah.
In
the 90s, I was a 412 instructor, and I was teaching guys from Vietnam. So I'm a young 30-year-old pilot, and I had to know everything. I had to know the speed of the shaft that turned the oil pump. And if I didn't know that, they'd climb all over my butt. So I literally knew everything about that aircraft in order to teach these guys. I don't know if I could tell you the max gross weight today. So.
Isn't that funny? It's like our brains purposely know what's important for the time. And then if it's not, man, you got to free up space. You gotta remember what's for dinner tonight, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Remember where I was yesterday, where I am today.
Yeah, it did take you a second, to be honest.
I forgot. I'll go up to the counter at the airport sometimes and they'll say, where are you going today? And I'll be, I don't know. I have to get on my phone. I'm like, oh, Austin.
Where is your base of operation? Like where do you live?
I live right outside of Salt Lake City in a place called Park City. It's just a little bit up into the mountains.
Gorgeous area.
Very, very fortunate.
Crazy the amount of helicopters in Provo. That's a great place. I feel like you could run a small flight training business there and stay fairly busy.
It's amazing how many helicopters have come into that area. It's because there's been a lot of successful business people in that area. I think I have like 8 helicopters there now.
Oh yeah,
that I instruct on, and there's more coming. So that area alone, I could just stay at home and do that.
Yeah, I've thought about opening like a little satellite base there. You have friends and clients there. It's just absolutely incredible. Not to mention a beautiful place to fly.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous.
I went on a fun trip a couple of years ago with York. We did like a heli camping trip.
Oh, how fun.
And
York's good people.
Man, you're a great guy. And to me, I was actually, I don't know if he would appreciate me saying this or not, but as him being a private owner pilot, I was a little apprehensive going into that trip. And I think he was an example. Man, I felt really comfortable. He was knowledgeable about the machine. He flew it well. He was very cautious and conscientious when we were doing off airports.
Yeah, no, he's a stellar pilot, and he's one of these guys that wants to know everything,
Mhm.
and he studies in between. And as
And
you
he's been
know,
doing it for a long
yeah,
time.
as you know, a lot of being a pilot is how wise you are. It's like, should I really be landing down there? Maybe I don't really need to do that. Whereas the
Yeah.
unwise pilot goes, let's try it.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, I guess
Hold my
that didn't
beer.
work out.
Are you from the Utah area then?
No, I moved there 2017.
Nice.
So
Well, beautiful.
yeah,
Absolute
fairly
beautiful
new.
area. Are you a big skier?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I moved there. I lived prior to that in Colorado in a place called Pagosa Springs, but it was
I love
very
Pagosa
difficult.
Springs. It's so
Yeah.
pretty
It was
there.
a great little town to live in, but it was very difficult to get in and out of, especially when they closed down the Durango airport because there was a snowstorm.
Sure.
And then I have to drive to Denver all night long. So I had to find some place that had a big airport right by it that had skiing right by it.
That's
And
important.
really, Salt Lake City is the only place.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm in a similar situation, but it's a small airport. I live in Redmond, Oregon, just outside of Bend.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
so I can get to pretty much anywhere I want. And then I'm about 35 minutes from Mount Bachelor.
Beautiful.
And I try to ski 2 to 3 times a week, including as a volunteer ski patroller with the National Ski
Wow.
Patrol there at
Excellent.
Mount Bachelor. So maybe
Awesome.
at some point our schedules can align and we can do some skiing.
Let's go skiing.
I would love
Definitely.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime
And
you're
I've
in
actually-
the Park City area, you let me know.
I've never skied Park City actually, so I would love to come and check out the hype.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Now, this year kind of sucked, but but there's been some epic years in the last few years. I mean, there was one year, I think it was 3 years ago, where it was just marvelous powder every day. I mean, stuff like, you're skiing up to here and it's you're giggling while you're skiing through
Don't
the
you
snow.
love that?
Yeah.
We
it's just
actually-
magical.
I hate to rub it in. We had the most snowpack this year in North America at Mount
Oh, did you?
Bachelor. We just kept getting pounded by these atmospheric rivers. And we just got lucky, right? There's a couple setups that, if we're, a couple miles north, literally, we just would have got rained on, right? And so we just ended up getting pounded early on, too. And then it stayed fairly consistent. Skiing just closed this past Monday, actually.
Really?
And
Wow.
quite a bit of snow that you can still ski. I mean, you can actually hike Bachelor probably till mid-July this year and still shred some turns,
And
which
still get
is
some snow.
just insane. So we had a really lucky year, and I had a couple of those days where I couldn't help but giggle. Bachelor is some very, very fun, great vertical on the backside and the West Bowls. And yeah, we got really lucky this year. One of the things that I'm impressed by you is running a business and flying all the time. Has that been hard to juggle? Because one of the things that I don't like about flying anymore is I bring all my attention to flying when I'm flying. It's always been something that I do. If I'm in the helicopter, I turn my phone to airplane mode. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to look. In fact, I thought my phone was on D&D right now. I just got a text message about this offer on this family beach house that I've wanted my entire life. And these guys have been jerking me around, but they've accepted my offer. So I'm feeling distracted right now because I'm excited about that. But in the helicopter, I don't want to see text messages like that because I can start thinking about things that take me outside. So how do you juggle running a very successful business and also flying so much?
Well, like you, I have the ability. And when you get into a helicopter, I think that's what attracts a lot of people to flying is when you're flying, you really get singularly focused on the task. And a lot of those problems you have and, issues and responsibilities kind of go a little fuzzy on the side. So it's a great escape. And I really should have given up most of my teaching years ago because I have so much to do. And it's getting to a point where I can't avoid it any longer. But when I'm on the road here, I'll teach all day. And then I tell everybody my real job is after I get back from flying, I go to the hotel room and I work till 10 o'clock at night. So that when I'm at home, I can be at home.
You're home.
Yeah. And I can I can do all that stuff, which doesn't always work out either.
So how much of your guys' work is flying with individuals versus flying with operations where you're training multiple pilots, whether it's an initial or like a recurrent training?
Well, like I said, the private operator is definitely increasing quite a bit. We're still mostly, companies, police departments, and so forth. And, we do everything from, a 30-person class to a one-person class, and then, a lot of people like, some of the folks that are financially secure enough to afford a helicopter want to be there all by themselves because they want every question to be from them, and they want to get all their stuff. They don't want to, it's like, stop distracting the class. I want to talk about this. Whereas other operators want to have a whole bunch of people so that there's a whole bunch of different questions being asked that maybe they didn't think about. So there's a lot of different personality traits within all these classes. So you just kind of adjust to what people want to do. And sometimes, half the class is like questions about stuff, and it's just discussions about a situation that happened or an incident that happened, or they want to talk about an accident or a part that's failed, and sometimes that's the most valuable training, right? The stuff that they're curious about and the stuff that can keep them out of accidents. So
yeah, 100%.
It doesn't always follow the same line.
Yeah, it definitely would keep class dynamic. I mean, that's a hard part, right? Like keeping people engaged through ground can be challenging, specifically in a classroom setting. So I think it's really important to be able to
everybody has to talk,
be relevant, talk about the operation specifically, and kind of work through it that way. So obviously you get to fly a lot of different helicopters, fun adventures, getting to do maneuvers, lots of cool things. What's your ideal airframe? What's your, like, if right now I said, hey, you got to take one more flight, and you get one more flight and you got an hour and a half, you're by yourself. What aircraft are you in and what are you doing?
Thank you to our sponsor, Heli Ladder. Enhance your fall protection and maintenance efficiency with Heli Ladder, the industry standard of ladder workstands. The iconic orange MX-5 system is fully modular and compatible with countless aircraft models for any type of operation, making you money by preventing accidents and reducing maintenance errors. For a free quote and special discounts, visit heliladder.com. Focus on your work, not your balance.
Well, I mean, there's no more enjoyable aircraft to do full downs than in the A-Star. I mean, it is the funnest aircraft to do autos, and you can do so much with it. It's very hard to damage the aircraft. I mean, you have to really get it outside the parameters before you're going to do any harm to that thing. So I mean, you just can't beat that aircraft. You want to go land up on top of a mountain, it'll take you up there. It'll land no problem. You're up where other helicopters struggle to even fly by. You can land up there.
Yeah, sure.
Thing. So there is really no better aircraft. But, one of the big things that's happening in our industry, and the shift is happening right now, is that we have slowly, until this point, gone from very simplistic helicopters where if you flew a Huey, you could just get into a Jet Ranger and take off and you're completely safe, no problems. You just, it's a little bit different of a cockpit and you could fly anything. But now in today's world, aircraft are becoming so complex, even the light ones, where the amount that you have to know is staggering. And it's easy if you've learned a lot of very complex aircraft because, in this helicopter, it's called this item, but this helicopter has the same thing, but it's just a little bit different. So you have that kind of commonality you can work on. Now it's just this massive book learning that you have to do. I mean, some of these, smaller helicopters, as far as I'm concerned, are 2 weeks of ground school, where, you talk about the 412, it was a few days of ground school for an initial. And now an aircraft that's approximately the same size or smaller is 2 weeks. And of just nonstop trying to stuff things into your brain. So that's one of the big things newer pilots need to think about now is don't wait until like you get the job flying the EC-135, the 145, the 160, the AW-139. Start studying one of those aircraft now And it doesn't matter which one you choose because they all kind of have the same parts, but they work differently. Then they're in different places. And so you have to start getting a basic knowledge of complex systems, or you'll be so far behind when you get in that class, your head will be just swimming.
Yeah, it's so true, Glenn. It's the amount of technology that they're stuffing inside even little helicopters these days is impressive. It's good. Also distracting at times, right? I sometimes encourage some of my private owners not to go overboard with their cockpit. I say, hey, look, this is good, but keep in mind this could also be distracting, and so you have to navigate that because, man, half the time, I even saw this on our flight recently. If like there's a lot of technology in the 130 I was in, it could be pretty easy just to keep your eyes inside,
Yeah.
messing around with the iPad here and then flipping, the flight plan from the iPad to the GPS, and then you're playing with this and you're doing that, and seeing what everything is doing, and it's all exciting and cool. And then you realize, like, crap, I haven't looked up for 3 minutes because you got the HeliCASTS on, right? That's probably not great. So,
And then all of a sudden there's an airplane right over here coming at
yeah,
you.
exactly. So it's kind of a fine line, right? Where tech is great, but I think sometimes it can almost be a little absurd. I've also seen it too. I've always had some sympathy for some of the older guys and gals within the industry. I remember training at Air Evac at the time,
Mhm.
and they had upgraded cockpits. They had the 500, the Garmin the 500 TXI, coupled with a 650 unit and a HeliCASTS. Nice little system. They would put it in the Long Ranger. They put it in the 407.
Mhm.
And I loved it. To me, fairly intuitive. I grew up playing video games. I grew up on computers, and I've used Garmin units before. So it all felt pretty simple. And then some of my classmates that were older guys that had been flying steam gauges for 25 years and could, long line with their eyes closed back in the day.
Yeah.
These poor guys flunk out of class, man. They had the hardest time. And so, do you see that often where sometimes people can't manage the actual system, the new technology?
Yeah, it is starting to go away. I think that folks that are less than comfortable on the really complex aircraft, they find a position somewhere in the industry that's still flying some of the older stuff, let's say, and then they just stay there and they run out their career right there. They don't take promotions to the the 145 or the 139 or one of these larger aircraft. And when you start looking at something like the TXI and you go, wow, that's really complicated. Well, compared to the other stuff now that's going into these cockpits, I mean, that's simplistic compared to how these aircraft are put together now. If you look at some of these manuals, like I'm putting together our 145 program, and 500 pages of the factory manual is just electronics. They're just little parts, are like 8 pages are on the rotor system, but there's 185 pages on the helionics. So on the display. So it's way more complicated these days, as opposed to going, yeah, I know kind of rotor system, I know how the hydraulics work. Well, that's the simple stuff.
Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah. Now you got to know, like, there's 30 different ways you can configure your 3 displays in front of you. If you push the wrong button, Lord help you that you'll be able to find your way back.
Yeah, I did a demo in the 145 a couple of years ago at HAI, and it was awesome, cool aircraft. But yeah, I mean, to tell you, like, most of the time, I didn't even know where I could look. The guy's like, oh yeah, look here, do that. I'm like,
there's too much.
And I'm guessing over time I would, figure it out. But yeah, super cool. That's where the industry's going, right? And in fact, I podcasted today with a guy that's pushing real hard for eVTOL, right? That's going to be a whole new lift ball wax if they can get through certification. That's in my opinion, a big if, but it's probably not
battery technology.
If when, but it's just interesting to see. And I think technology is only going to keep going in that direction. And so being a systems manager at some point might be what pilots are doing, right? Managing systems, kind of similar to like our brothers and sisters that are flying airlines, right? A lot of that is just managing systems and going from there. Well, Glenn, if people want to get a hold of you, what is the best way? I reached out to you on LinkedIn. You were really responsive. You got right back to me. But if I'm maybe a customer or maybe even I work for an operation and I don't feel like they're doing great recurrent training, and I kind of want to, get them excited about maybe bringing in a company like Eurosafety to come and help with some of that training. What's the best way to connect with you, and how do you help pilots navigate that situation?
Well, if you want to schedule a class, the email is training@eurosafety.us.
Okay.
Now, a lot of pilots, though, have specific questions. A lot of operators have a specific way they want to do something, or they don't really know how does the class work or stuff. They just want to talk to me personally. I talk to people all day long, or text with people all day long. And you can email me at glen@eurosafety.us. And then once people start working with me, I give them my phone number, and my phone is texting all during the interview today. I must have gotten 10 different texts. So, and then, when I'm at the airport waiting for my airplane, I try to go through these things the best I can and so forth. But the easiest way, I have a great crew of folks that put this all together. I am by no means the person that's running the show. I go out and, talk about helicopters, and they make all that stuff happen from Annette to Jeff to Derek. I mean, they're just on getting all these, getting it all together and making it happen. So,
well, it's all about, having the great team behind you, and you must be a great leader because you realize that and you recognize those people. Something I try to do in my own business, try to kind of realize that, I'm maybe the guy that started it, but I'm actually not even the guy that's that good at it anymore. My team at most points surpasses me, and oftentimes I'm a liability. They'll be like, maybe you shouldn't talk anymore. Maybe just go hide in the corner.
That sounds like a conversation people have had with me.
Go look at a P&L and shut up. I guess that's what I've been relegated to. But Glen, thank you so much. Again, it's Glen@eurosafety.us, or you check him out on LinkedIn. He's posting videos on all social media platforms that I'm aware of, and it's great content. So even if you just want to consume some fun, what I call productive social media content, because there's a lot of unproductive helicopter content, especially. You see some pretty stupid things sometimes.
Yeah.
So if you want to see a positive force in the industry doing positive things on social media, then check out Glen's content. To our listeners, of course, as I thanked you in the beginning, I thank you again. I wouldn't be able to do this show without you. Similar to Glen, just starting these videos and thinking that, hey, maybe people will like these, and now they've really caught wind. That's why I started the podcast. I figured maybe someone would like to hear interviews with other badass helicopter people, just like I love having these conversations, but I never thought people would listen. So the fact that y'all listen means the world to me. It's got me a sponsorship through Vertical. So big thanks to MHM Publishing and the Vertical HeliCASTS platform. Again, your continued support and trust within this podcast has been incredible. And of course, to our sponsors, just love working with you guys and representing brands. So Glen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and to our listeners, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Halsey.
See you, Glen.
Bye-bye now.
Please stay tuned for a final word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Thank you to our sponsor, Heli Ladder. Enhance your fall protection and maintenance efficiency with Heli Ladder, the industry standard of ladder workstands. The iconic orange MX5 system is fully modular and compatible with countless aircraft models for any type of operation, making you money by preventing accidents and reducing maintenance errors. For a free quote and special discounts, visit heliladder.com. Focus on your work, not your balance.
As always, a special thanks to Helicopter for producing this podcast. Specializing in helicopter evaluations, faster sales, and superb service, Helicopter is the go-to agency for clients expecting immediate results. Helicopter's team of helicopter professionals are the best in the business. Using their aviation expertise, a nationwide network, and a proprietary 76-step listing strategy, Helicopter will convert your listing from Mayday to payday. Ready to get started? Text helicopter to 1-855-HELICOPTER. That's helicopter to 1-855-735-5226. And a Helicopter pilot agent will reach out. Helicopter. List it, sell it, done.